So in this video I'm going to show you how to create a remote display that is connected to your Amazon virtual machine. Unfortunately, this is actually a multi-stage process, but once you've done it a few times you will get the hang of it. The precondition is that on the machine that you're connecting from, basically your local laptop or desktop, you have to have a remote display client, specifically a VNC client. The good news is that there are many freely available excellent VNC clients that you can install on pretty much any platforms. Examples are Tight VNC, Real VNC, and I guess Chicken of the VNC for Mac, which is what I'm going to be using. The Mac, by the way, has a remote display client that is pre-installed, but as turns out it's extremely sluggish. So I would recommend that you don't use it and instead get a real VNC client that will actually work. Well, after you installed the software, at that point we actually are going to create an SSH connection to tunnel all the traffic from your client to the server. As it turns out, VNC uses a special port which by default, in the way we have set up our firewall for our VM, will be blocked. So instead of opening another port, which creates all sorts of vulnerabilities, what we're going to do is we're going to tunnel the traffic of the VNC client over this SSH tunnel. At that point, we're going to set up a password for the VNC server. We're going to start the VNC server, and then we're going to create a terminal and start a window manager. So let's see how we do this in steps. All right, so we have our VM that is running, that's its IP address, and the first step is to actually set up the SSH tunnel to it, as was the case for the just text-based terminal. We're going to connect using certificates. So we connect as Ubuntu, and we connect to host 144.71.6. Of course, your host will be different. Now the difference here is that we're actually going to set up a tunnel. A tunnel in SSH consists of three elements. There is a local port, that is the local port on your machine to which the VNC client is going to connect, and any traffic sent to that port actually is automatically sent to the other end of the tunnel. Now the other end of the tunnel, we want it to be on the virtual machine, and since we're actually connected to that virtual machine through this SSH connection, the name of that machine happens to be localhost. Now that localhost is not your desktop, it's actually the VM, and we want stuff to show up on that machine on 19.0.0.2. So we just say connect, and we are now connected. Now the next step to do is to actually set up a password for the VNC server, and we do that with the command VNC password. You need to do this only the first time that you connect to actually when you start a VM. So you won't have to execute this command multiple times. So you just specify a new password. All right. And at that point, we're ready to actually start the VNC server. Now, to make this easier, we're actually going to use a little trick. The fact that this IMI that I've given you actually has some history of commands that have been run in it before. So we grep for xv, and you will see that the xv command starts xvnc server. You can actually have multiple servers running on what's effectively multiple virtual displays. That is that little one that we're providing. Then there is the port on which clients will connect, the size of the display, where to find the configuration file, and well, how many colors to use. So to start the display with these characteristics, I can just ask to re-execute this command. So it will start, and now we're actually running a VNC server. At that point, we can actually start the VNC client. In my case, I'm using chicken of the VNC. So I'm going to click on Open Connection, and I'm connecting locally to localhost 1902. I give it the password, and I click Yes. And what I get is this empty window that doesn't really have any consoles yet. At that point, I actually have to start an extern, and I have to tell it where to start the extern. So I specify that that is to happen on the first display one, which is the one that the VNC server is exporting. And once I do that, you get an extern. Now, you can still move it because we're not yet running a window manager. There is a very simple window manager that is pre-installed in your VM, which is TWM. It's an old window manager, but is one that is actually very lightweight, and it's ideal for remote connections. And once you've done that, you have a window manager, and at that point you can run all sorts of programs like Firefox or Eclipse or many other programs that are actually installed. All right.